At the company party, Lauren took a sip from the intern's glass. The next day, Henry, our workaholic executive assistant, missed a meeting for the first time ever and went completely dark. I bought a plane ticket without telling a soul. When the ever-diligent Henry didn't show up for 3 days straight, people started whispering that I'd finally pissed off Ms Vance and gotten myself fired. Months went by, and the paperwork in her office piled up. It wasn't until a stack of files toppled over that Lauren finally saw the resignation letter buried at the very bottom. She tried to call, only to find she'd been blocked. A while later, at a business meeting, the back of a partner's assistant was enough to make her lose her focus. Lauren ran after him, but she was stopped by Vivian. "I'm sorry, Ms. Vance. This is my partner in business and also my beloved husband. Please have some self-respect. It was at the company party thrown in my honor." I stood by Lauren's side, accepting a steady stream of toasts from my colleagues. Even wine coolers will get you drunk if you have enough, and I started to feel unsteady on my feet. I reached for Lauren's arm to steady myself, but she sidestepped, and my hand grasped at empty air. Lauren leaned in and whispered a warning, "Henry, we're in public. Don't cross the line." The intern, Edward, watched me timidly from the side. "Henry," he said, "could you teach me a few things sometime? I want to be as capable as you so I can stay by Ms. Vance's side." Lauren scoffed. "You're too innocent. Don't let him be a bad influence on you." Her comment sent a ripple of whispers through the crowd. "I heard Ms. Vance hates it when Henry goes out to close deals. You don't think he uses some shady methods, do you? There's been a rumor for a while that she can't stand him. He's only still here because he's a veteran and has landed a lot of big accounts. But now that she's fully in charge of the company, she could fire him in a heartbeat." The same people who had been fawning over me just moments ago now backed away, afraid of being caught on the wrong side. The intern, Edward, handed his own half-empty glass to Lauren. She took it without a second thought and tilted her head back, finishing the drink. Only then did Edward look at me and exclaim, "Oh my gosh, I wasn't paying attention and gave Ms. Vance my own glass. I'm so sorry, I'm always messing things up." Lauren froze for a second, then lifted the glass and saw the faint lipstick smudge on the rim. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I couldn't stop myself from throwing up. Some of it splattered onto Lauren. She shoved me away in disgust and followed Edward to go change. My assistant, Ben, rushed over to help me up. "Henry, man, when are you and Ms. Vance finally going to go public? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry thinks they can walk all over you now." I forced a bitter smile. The only reason they dared to was because Lauren gave them the courage. I had the job closest to her, yet our hearts were drifting further and further apart. I looked up, dazed, at the colleagues who were watching the drama unfold. Suddenly, I didn't know what the point of all my hard work at this company was anymore. The woman who once held me and called me her indispensable right-hand man was now walking away with her arm linked through another guy's, getting smaller and smaller in my sight. "Henry's done for this time. He actually threw up on Ms. Vance. He'll probably be fired by tomorrow." Lauren never mentioned firing me, but she didn't come home that night. Our housekeeper, Arthur, reheated dinner over and over. "Sir, it looks like Ms. Vance isn't coming back tonight. Why don't you have a bite to eat?" I picked up the cake from the table and put a spoonful in my mouth. "Arthur, why has the cake been so bitter lately?" Arthur sighed. "Sir, maybe you should stop going into the office. It seems she doesn't want you involved in company business anymore." I looked down at the icing on the cake. "To the best assistant." She had personally baked a cake for me after I landed my first major account, with those words written clumsily across the top. We made a pact then. Every time I closed a deal, we would celebrate like this, just the two of us. The words on the cake never changed. But the cake went from being homemade by her to being store-bought to eventually just being ordered by the household staff. And our two-person celebration gradually became my own lonely ritual. The cake was too awful to eat. I didn't want it anymore. As I stood up, I heard the sound of a key in the front door. Lauren came in, leaning on Edward for support. She paused when she saw the cake I'd thrown in the trash. "What's your problem now? Weren't you the one who asked me to get you a cake?" She suddenly grabbed my hand, her grip tight. You love this, don't you? Why aren't you eating it? A chill ran through me, and I tried to pull my hand away. As if suddenly sober, Lauren let go. She tugged at the silk scarf around her neck and glanced at Edward. A car key was placed on the table. Take this car home. It's late, drive safe. I recognized the key and let out a self-deprecating laugh. It was for the first car Lauren had ever given me, for Valentine's Day. Pink supercar. The day I drove it to the office, it turned a lot of heads and started some nasty rumors. After that, I left it in the garage and never drove it again. But because it was a gift from her, I still had it regularly maintained. And now, she was giving the key to someone else just like that. Seeing me staring at the key, Lauren asked impatiently, "It's just a car. If you can't bear to part with it, he can take mine." I turned away, my voice cold. "Your car. Your choice." Edward took the key and left, overjoyed. Lauren glanced at me once before disappearing into the study. Arthur brought out a glass of water and some aspirin. "Sir, why don't you take this up to her? Maybe she'll cool down and come back to the master bedroom." I took the glass from the tray, tilted my head back, and downed it myself. Then I placed the empty glass back on the tray as Arthur stared in shock. If she likes the study so much, she can sleep there. I went back to our room and pulled out our marriage certificate. The couple in the photo was gorgeous, smiling sweetly, looking like a match made in heaven. Who would have thought that in just a few short years we'd be headed for divorce? I contacted my lawyer. Soon, this marriage certificate would be a divorce decree. The next morning, I woke up groggy, but a new message on my phone snapped me awake. "Mr. Evans, I just checked. According to public records, you are still legally unmarried. Could you please double-check the details regarding your divorce proceedings?" I stared at the message for a long time, unable to process it. When we got married, I was in the middle of a huge project. Lauren, worried I'd be distracted, said she had connections and could take care of the paperwork directly. I never gave it a second thought. I never imagined she would give me a fake marriage certificate. I opened my laptop to write a resignation letter, but the latest email in my inbox caught my eye. "Mr. Evans, congratulations on your acceptance. Please report at the scheduled time to begin the program." I'd completely forgotten about the advanced professional course I had applied for. I was going to give it up because I was too busy at work, but I hadn't expected to be accepted. I replied to the email, then wrote my resignation letter and asked Ben to hand it in for me. I packed my bags and bought a flight to Boston. Before I turned off my phone for takeoff, I blocked Lauren on everything. I had a dream on the plane. When I first joined the company, I had the best scores on both the written and interview portions of the exam, but my spot was given to someone who pulled some strings. I was leaving the building, completely dejected, when I bumped right into Lauren. She glanced at my resume and asked what had happened. "From now on, you'll work for me. My executive assistant is about to be reassigned anyway." Lauren had two younger half-sisters, both illegitimate, who held key positions in the company. The three of them were in a cutthroat battle for control. I watched Lauren navigate the corporate world, learning so much from her ruthless efficiency. The longer I stayed by her side, the more I wanted to become someone who could stand with her as an equal. When I'd work late, Lauren would smile and ask, "How are you more dedicated than me, the actual boss?" Eventually, I truly found my footing in the company. I landed one major project after another. The look in Lauren's eyes when she looked at me grew brighter with surprise. I can't believe I found such a gem just by picking someone up off the street. Lauren took me everywhere with her. We were practically inseparable. Someone once jokingly asked her, "Ms. Vance, why do you take your assistant with you everywhere you go?" Lauren smiled and said, "He's the one person I can't live without now." I took that sentence to heart. One night, Lauren got drunk and kissed me. Our relationship started naturally after that, but we kept it quiet because of how it would look at the company. We spent all our time together, so I never felt like it mattered whether we were public or not. Lauren would always hold me and promise, "As soon as I'm truly in charge, I'll make sure you can walk into this company, head held high as my husband." I woke up and touched the corner of my eye. My fingertips came away damp. To think that even by the time I left, that promise was never fulfilled. The plane landed, and I went straight to the program orientation. Everyone here was the best of the best elites who had achieved incredible things in their respective fields. We exchanged ideas, and after class we'd grab drinks to network. Life was fulfilling and relaxed. Only occasionally would Ben send me a message to vent. Henry, you have no idea. The day after you left, that Edward kid was officially promoted to Ms Vance's assistant. He's so full of himself his tail is practically wagging. Today, the new assistant tried to have your old desk moved. I almost got into a fight with him. Ms Vance had to come out and stop him. This new guy eats lunch with her in her office every single day. Does he have no sense of boundaries? Does he really think he's the new Mr. Vance just because you're gone? Henry, are you really not coming back? This new assistant has been picking on me for days. I get yelled at constantly. I felt a pang of guilt. Ben was the only one at the company who knew about my relationship with Lauren. I didn't think my absence would cause him this much trouble. If it's too much, just find a new job. Don't put up with that. I'll write you a letter of recommendation. Henry, you're the best. When you figure out where you're going next, I'm coming with you to be your assistant again. I hadn't decided on my own future plans yet. I couldn't hold the kid back from earning a living, so I wrote him the recommendation letter first. So many companies had tried to poach me over the years that I wasn't worried about being unemployed. I just wanted to take some time to learn and grow. I was sitting in a quiet cocktail lounge, listening to the people around me share their stories, staring into my glass. Suddenly, someone sat down next to me. I turned and saw it was a classmate from my program. I remembered her because she had shown up 2 days late. When she walked in, I thought a celebrity had arrived. Her face was that stunning. Even the seasoned elites in our class couldn't help but follow her with their eyes. I gave Vivian a polite nod and a small smile. Then my gaze returned to my drink. But the person beside me suddenly spoke. How come you only listen and never talk? Are you an introvert like me? I was surprised she'd initiated a conversation. From what I'd seen, she never spoke to anyone in class unless they spoke to her first. I shook my head. My story, it's not worth telling. That story was filled with Lauren, and I didn't want to bring it up again. But Vivian seemed to have taken an interest in me. She lowered her voice. I'll trade you a secret for your story. How about it? I didn't even look up. I'm not interested in your secrets. She suddenly laughed. What about a job offer from Zenith Corp? Surely you're interested in that? I finally looked up, my eyes betraying my excitement despite my best efforts to hide it. Zenith Corporation. That had been my ultimate dream. Vivian smiled, a little helplessly. I knew it. Work is always more appealing to you. Seeing me staring at her intently, Vivian's expression turned serious. I'm very close with the CEO of Zenith. Don't worry, I'm not messing with you. It made sense. The people in this program were not ordinary. She wouldn't lie just to trick me into telling her my story. I took a sip of my drink. I started from when I graduated and joined Vance Industries. Lauren made me her assistant, and it caused some nasty rumors around the office. Some people thought I was just some parachute hire and felt the need to challenge me. The printer would coincidentally break right when I needed to use it. The water cooler would happen to be empty when I went for a drink. In the cafeteria, the moment I sat down, everyone at the table would get up and leave. In the company-wide group chat, people openly speculated about my relationship with Lauren. I kept to myself, pouring all my energy into my work. After they saw that I was genuinely just working hard, and that I rarely even spent time alone with Lauren, the gossip slowly died down. When I was first rejected for the job, I thought I was the unluckiest person alive. After meeting Lauren, I often felt like the luckiest. That's why my feelings for Lauren as my boss became something different. I felt like I had to work as hard as possible to not let that luck go to waste. After Lauren's previous assistant was transferred, she must have finally realized that even though she was short an assistant, her workload hadn't been affected at all. She stopped me one day as I was bringing her coffee. You're a fast learner. I almost didn't notice I had a new assistant. The documents for her to sign were on her desk on time every morning, The coffee tasted exactly the same, and her schedule of social engagements was perfectly organized. Everything was designed to make her life easier, and it made her pay more attention to me. Lauren seemed to realize I had potential and began to patiently teach me many things. I became her new date for business events. We went from only seeing each other when I entered her office to being inseparable day in and day out. Lauren was a serious worker, without any of the bad habits of other spoiled heirs. First, I didn't get it. Do rich people really need to work this hard? Only later did I discover that her two sisters were constantly making trouble. For her, and their mother always favored the illegitimate daughters. So she had to work exceptionally hard just to hold on to what was hers. My admiration and gratitude for her were now mixed with a touch of sympathy. Maybe that old saying is true. A man's downfall begins the day he starts feeling sorry for a woman. I worked even harder, staying later and later at the office. Every time I went out for a business dinner, I was determined to close the deal. One time, Lauren got drunk at the dinner table. She sat next to me, frowning and rubbing her temples, her face flushed from the alcohol. But the client across from us was relentless, holding a glass right up to her face. Normally, this kind of awkward, forced drinking situation would never happen. But this time, the client seemed dead set on it. Just as Lauren reached for the glass, I snatched it from her and downed it in one gulp. A brief silence fell over the room, which turned to panic as a red rash slowly spread across my face. I was rushed to the hospital. Lauren stood by my bedside, frowning. You knew you were allergic to hard liquor and you still drank that? Are you trying to kill yourself? I just smiled at her. This way, the dinner could end early. I had already seen the client's ill intentions. A woman as smart as Lauren couldn't have missed it. Someone had to cause a scene that night to end the farce. Lauren had me admitted to the ICU for observation, and she stayed outside. The client was getting anxious. I just wanted Ms Vance to have a good time. Who knew her little assistant would jump in to take a drink for her? Is he going to be okay? Nothing serious is going to happen, right? By the time I came out of the ICU after a good nap, the contract was signed. Lauren gave me a week off and doubled my salary. That night, Lauren drove me home. Standing under the dim lights of my apartment building, she stroked my head. Don't be so reckless anymore. No contract is more important than you. Then her lips, tasting of wine, met mine. I stood there, stunned, watching her face get closer and closer, forgetting to react. It wasn't until she left that I stumbled upstairs, leaning against my door and covering my face. She had just kissed me, kissed this face covered in allergic red blotches. My phone screen lit up the dark room. It was a message from Lauren. Stay by my side forever. Will you be my boyfriend? I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and didn't sleep a wink all night. Later, an investigation revealed that the client that night had been deliberately trying to give her a hard time on her mother's orders. If I hadn't had that allergic reaction, Lauren wouldn't have been able to leverage putting me in the ICU, and the client, fearing a man's death on his conscience, wouldn't have signed the contract. Lauren crumpled up the report and swept all the files off her desk. She hugged me. Henry, just wait a little longer. I'm not strong enough to fight her now, but one day, I'll be able to protect you. I just held her tightly. Besides me, she had no one. After that, Lauren's methods at the company became much more ruthless. Before, as the publicly acknowledged heir, she had always been relatively lenient, and her half-sisters only dared to pull small stunts behind her back. But now, she launched a series of aggressive moves, seemingly determined not to stop until they were out of the company for good. Their projects began to fail one after another. Even with their mother's protection, they were held accountable by the board of directors and eventually forced to resign in disgrace. The day her mother came to her office, they had a massive fight and parted on terrible terms. The half-sisters were gone, but the mother and daughter had completely torn each other apart, fighting a brutal war within the company. During that time, Lauren and I practically lived at the office. In those countless nights under the fluorescent lights, we were partners in crime and each other's solace. I thought then that what we had was irreplaceable. After several company restructurings, I was there with Lauren until the very end. The moment she truly took power, she proposed to me. The company was still reeling from the infighting and needed time to recover. Naturally, we had no time for a wedding or a honeymoon. Plus, the sudden change in our relationship would have been hard to explain to the employees. Everything was done quietly, but years passed, and our secret relationship was never made public. Instead, new recruits, just like I had been, began to appear by Lauren's side. "I just want to cultivate a few more bright minds to lighten your burden a little," she'd say. But every time I saw those young men looking at Lauren with the same worshipful gaze I once had, a sense of unease would wash over me. After we got married, I had to manage not only the company's affairs but also our home. I was busier than ever before. By the time I noticed the change in Lauren, it felt like there was no turning back. The first rumor I heard was about Lauren defending an intern from a client, smashing the client's glass and storming out with the intern in tow. Later, the intern started bringing her homemade lunches every day as a thank you. I thought Lauren would refuse, but she didn't. One afternoon, I walked in to find the intern setting out a meal for her. Lauren glanced at the beautifully arranged, delicious-smelling food on her desk, then looked at me thoughtfully. "Henry, it seems you've never once made me a home-cooked meal." The intern covered his mouth to stifle a giggle. "Henry is all about work. Little things like this are better left to me." I didn't understand. Lauren's lunches had always been catered by a high-end hotel, delivered on time every day. She'd been eating that way for years. Why was it suddenly not good enough? That evening, I asked Arthur, "Am I a bad husband? Is that why Lauren still won't tell anyone about us?" Arthur tried to comfort me. "Sir, you and Ms Vance are both so busy. Maybe once things calm down, you can suggest taking a break together." I thought about it and agreed. Communication is key in a marriage. I threw myself into my work, planning to have a serious talk with Lauren after landing this next big project. But in the end, the project was a success, and at the celebration party, Lauren and I reached the end of the road. I tilted my head back and finished the rest of the wine in my glass. I turned to look at Vivian. "So? More dramatic than the usual gossip you hear, right?" Vivian cleared her throat. "Certainly interesting, and a bit foolish. I think everyone at my company finds me too serious. You're the first person who's ever told me gossip." I smiled and let out a long breath. Unexpectedly, voicing all those things I didn't want to think about made me feel a sense of relief. I held out my hand to Vivian. "The story's over. Where's my job offer?" Vivian placed a freshly poured glass of wine in my hand. "If you decide to join Zenith, you can start whenever you're ready. I'll make the arrangements. It would be their honor to have you. A dedicated employee like you is a rare find. Then here's to a pleasant partnership." On the way back, I still couldn't believe it. I just landed my next job. The month-long training program ended quickly. Vivian and I didn't speak again, aside from a brief greeting if we passed each other. We would never see each other again, and this person who knew my secret would disappear back into the crowd. Zenith Corp was in Boston, so I rented an apartment near the office. On my first day, the sky, which had been overcast, suddenly cleared up. All along the street, pedestrians were stopping to look up at the sky. My own steps felt a little lighter. It seemed like a good omen. I gave my name to the receptionist in the lobby, and soon someone came down to take me up in the elevator. So smooth. It looked like Vivian really hadn't been lying. The person escorting me kept stealing glances at me in the elevator. I gave him a polite smile, and he quickly looked away. It was normal for a new hire who'd been fast-tracked to get some curious looks. I proved myself with my work. I followed him to the top floor. "Mr. Evans, please wait here for a moment. The CEO is still in a meeting." I waited for 2 hours. I'd already had 3 cups of tea. As I was nearing the bottom of my 4th, there was finally some movement at the door. I turned and saw a familiar figure. I wasn't surprised. I just gave the woman in the doorway, Vivian, a small smile. "So you work at Zenith too. It'll be a pleasure working with you." I had already guessed that if she could offer me a job, she must hold a senior position at the company. Vivian reached out and shook my hand. "The pleasure is all mine, Mr. Evans." As we released our hands, I heard a faint voice from behind her. Mr. Evans, the CEO, is out of her meeting. You'll be her new executive assistant. I was still in a daze sitting at my new desk. I couldn't believe Vivian was the CEO of Zenith Corporation. The CEO of Zenith I'd seen on TV was a spry old man. How did he suddenly get so young? My new colleague, Chris, leaned over and whispered, "Our Ms. Lynn just took over the company, so it hasn't been announced publicly and she hasn't made any appearances. But she was already a powerhouse before this. The company she started on her own is a leader in the industry. I thought you must have known the CEO to get parachuted in like this, but you didn't even recognize her. Did she poach you from somewhere?" I gave Chris an awkward smile. Who would have thought the CEO of a major corporation would attend a professional development course herself and personally recruit employees? Talk about being hands-on. Just as Chris and I were whispering, the office door swung open. Vivian leaned against the doorframe and cleared her throat, catching our attention. She pointed a finger. "You, help him move his desk into my office." Chris shot up immediately. Less than 10 minutes later, my workstation had been relocated into the CEO's office, right in Vivian's line of sight. I despaired internally, caught slacking off on my first day. Vivian must be doing this to keep me from being lazy. What a cunning capitalist. As Chris was leaving, he patted my shoulder and gave me a good luck, "You'll need it" look. Resigned to my fate, I sat at my new desk, my eyes glued to the computer screen, terrified that Vivian would catch me not working. Diligently, out of the corner of my eye, I could occasionally feel Vivian's gaze on me. Just as I felt I was about to turn into a stone statue at my desk, Vivian's voice broke the silence. "You're gonna burn a hole through that screen. Come and eat." Only then did I notice that a meal had been set up in the guest area at some point. It was clearly prepared specially for Vivian. I stood up and stretched my stiff body. "I think I'll go to the cafeteria with Chris." My hand was almost on the doorknob. "Chris went to the cafeteria a long time ago. Do you even know what floor it's on?" Wow, Chris was eager to eat. I was about to say I could ask someone, but Vivian didn't give me the chance, pointing directly at the sofa opposite her. "Sit." The words died in my throat, and I swallowed them back down. Eating across from your boss is incredibly stressful. I really couldn't understand why that Edward kid had loved eating with Lauren so much. I picked up my chopsticks gingerly, trying not to make a sound, hoping to become invisible. The whole meal felt like I was committing a crime. As soon as I finished eating and wiped my mouth, there was a knock on the office door. Chris peeked his head in. "Ms. Lynn, if there's nothing else, I'm heading down for lunch." I looked in shock at the nearly empty dishes on the table, then back at Vivian. But Vivian acted as if nothing had happened, continuing to eat at her leisurely pace. I had to admit she had a natural air of nobility about her, the kind that could only be cultivated by a very wealthy and distinguished family. Lauren, perhaps because of her upbringing, had more of a ruthless edge. Plus, for years she had pretended to be an incompetent slacker to lower her mother's guard, which over time made her seem more like a spoiled brat. Vivian put down her chopsticks, and I immediately grabbed a napkin and handed it to her. Eating with the boss really brings out the sycophant in you. Vivian took the napkin, but then she leaned in close to me. I felt a soft, gentle touch on the side of my mouth. I stared, stunned, at Vivian's face, now right in front of mine. I felt like I'd been struck by lightning. Wasn't this a little too intimate? I shot up from my seat and bolted out of the office. "Ms. Lynn, I need to use the restroom." I didn't dare go back into the office. I waited at Chris's desk instead. The moment he came back, I pulled him aside. "Tell me honestly, does Ms. Lynn have a one that got away? A childhood sweetheart? An unrequited love?" I pointed to my own face. "Do I look like him?" Otherwise, I couldn't explain her bizarre behavior. Chris stared at me for a few minutes, then shook his head vigorously. "I have no idea. I never had any contact with Ms. Lynn before she inherited the company. Why don't you just ask her?" Following his gaze, I slowly turned around to see Vivian standing right behind me. "I'm sorry, that was a bit forward of me." I had just let out a sigh of relief when she continued, but I couldn't help myself. I dragged Vivian back into her office and shut the door behind us. I sat across from her, prim and proper. Ms. Lin, I truly value this job opportunity, but I don't want to receive special treatment just because I resemble someone. I will work hard and I won't waste the position you've given me. Vivian sat across from me, a smirk playing on her lips as she listened. I carefully watched her expression. She wasn't angry. Good. When I finished, she just nodded. You work hard. I won't interfere. I thought my words had worked, and I genuinely went back to focusing on my work. But Vivian seemed to have a lot of free time. A little while later, a cup of coffee appeared on my desk. Try these new coffee beans. I don't want it. I took a sip and grimaced at the bitterness. A short while later, a small cake was placed on my desk. Afternoon snack from the company. I took a bite, and only then did Vivian return to her own desk. I was finally able to breathe when Vivian was called into a meeting. I organized the documents she needed to sign that afternoon, placed them on her desk, and as I turned, I knocked a book off the corner. I bent down to pick it up, and a photograph fell out. It was a graduation photo. I was about to slip the photo back in when my hand froze. I looked closer. Wasn't this my class graduation photo? I found a younger, more awkward version of myself in the second row. Could it be that Vivian and I were classmates? But I couldn't possibly have forgotten a classmate this beautiful. I looked over the photo again carefully. Sure enough, Vivian wasn't in it. A blurry fragment of a memory flashed through my mind. It was too fast for me to catch. Vivian pushed the door open, and I was still holding the photo. Even though it was my photo, I suddenly felt a pang of guilt, like I'd been caught doing something wrong. Seeing Vivian's face, the memory I had just missed finally clicked into place. I asked her, my voice full of uncertainty, did we date? I had a brief relationship during my freshman year of college. It was so short and ended so bizarrely that I wished I could erase the memory entirely. It was right after our military-style orientation. I was tanned and dark from the sun. I was walking past the music building when I heard a piano playing inside. On a whim, I snuck over to listen. The Vivian back then was a little different from now. She wore glasses and had short hair. She sat at the piano, and the dappled sunlight from the window fell on the keys, dancing with her fingers. She spotted me. Who's out there? I was self-conscious about my tan and didn't want her to see me, so I turned and ran. After that, I went to listen to her play often, trying everything I could to lighten my skin. Once I'd made some progress, I launched a full-on campaign to win her over. Vivian would always smile helplessly at me and turn me down. But after a month of my persistence, she actually said yes. Just when I thought I was finally going to have a romantic college relationship, she disappeared. Truly disappeared. I never saw her again. It got to the point where I sometimes wondered if that memory was just a figment of my imagination. Looking at the Vivian in front of me now, I felt a surge of anger. I threw the book I was holding at her. The book grazed Vivian's cheek, leaving a red mark. And then I was suddenly at a loss. I just assaulted my boss. A cardinal sin of the workplace. Vivian bent down, picked up the book and the photo and walked over to me. I'm sorry. That was the second time today I'd heard her say she was sorry. I ignored her, turned around, and went back to my desk to continue my work. But after that, Vivian stopped pretending. Sometimes I wondered if I was her assistant or if she was mine. Even Chris noticed something was off between us. I thought I was bringing in a well-connected new hire, but it turns out he's the boss's crush. I'm on your side, by the way. When you two finally make it official, don't forget to put in a good word for me to get a few extra vacation days. I didn't think Vivian and I had a future. The memory of telling her my entire history with Lauren made me cringe so hard I could build a house. Until we went on a business trip to a neighboring city together. The moment the car crashed on the highway, she threw herself over me, holding me in a death grip. Luckily, we were shaken but alive. We were injured but not fatally. By her hospital bed, I looked down at Vivian, lying there in a cast. You left without a word back then, and now you're risking your life for me. Is it fun, messing with me? Vivian tried to reach for my hand, but the movement made her wince in pain. I was suddenly sent abroad. The messages I sent you all went unanswered. I thought you never wanted to speak to me again. I thought back hard. I never received any messages. Then I remembered that old account I hadn't used in 1,000 years. It had been so long that when I tried to log in again, the password was wrong. I couldn't be bothered to recover it, so I just made a new one. I sat down on the edge of the bed, deflated. Forget it. It's just fate. You get some rest. I'm leaving. Vivian called out to me. I can't work with this cast on. Shouldn't you move your office into my hospital room so you can report to me in a timely manner? My workstation moved from Vivian's office to her hospital room. She became much more fragile after being hospitalized. It was always this hurts or that hurts. I found myself being much gentler with her, afraid of causing any further injury. One day, I fell asleep at my desk. In a daze, I felt someone approach, and a light kiss was placed on my forehead. How could it be fate? Destiny just brought a better version of you back to me. This time, it's my turn to pursue you. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, not daring to open them. Vivian's courtship was so grand that the entire company knew she had a crush on someone who wasn't reciprocating. Every time I walked past my colleagues, I was terrified they would notice the signs and I would become the center of attention. Vivian took me everywhere. At a dinner, someone pushed a glass of wine in front of me. Vivian took the glass away immediately. Mr. Lee, he's allergic to alcohol. She didn't drink the wine, just placed it in front of herself. But the protective gesture was clear. No one dared to force Vivian to drink. Naturally, no one bothered me either. Started raining when we left that day. Vivian was driving me home, but her car couldn't fit down my narrow alley. She took off her suit jacket and held it over her head. Quick, get under. I ducked under it, and she shielded me as we ran down the alley. A group of students ran past us. In that moment, I felt like I was back in college. By the time we reached my building, Vivian's jacket was soaked. I reached out and brushed the rain from her hair. Vivian froze, not daring to move. I wrapped my arms around her neck. Vivian, you're even more beautiful now than you were back then. Why don't we pick up where we left off in college? The next day at the office, the rumor was that the boss had finally won over her crush. Chris, that big mouth, made sure that by the end of the afternoon, everyone knew Vivian and I were dating. I never thought about how long this relationship would last. It was more about making up for that relationship that had ended so abruptly. So, I was still in a bit of disbelief when Vivian and I got our marriage license. I accompanied Vivian to a business conference. She held my hand the entire time, telling everyone she met that they were invited to our wedding. I'm gonna get some air. As I turned to leave, my eyes scanned the room and I thought I saw a familiar face. I shook my head. Lauren wouldn't be in Boston. Lauren was distractedly fending off people who came to toast her. Ms. Vance, I'll send you the collaboration proposal later. Please take a look and see if you're interested. Lauren nodded. Just give it to my assistant. The words caught in her throat. Assistant. She hadn't had an assistant for a long time. The last one had been fired for making too many mistakes. At first, she had found it amusing, cultivating a delicate flower, watching him bloom. It was a fulfilling feeling. Just like Henry, he was her proudest creation. But sometimes, when a flower bloomed too magnificently, it became a bit boring. So she decided she wanted to experience the joy of nurturing someone new again. But she had forgotten. Not every flower was a Henry. When the files on her desk piled up, with no one to pre-screen and categorize them for her, no one to flag problems in reports, no one to have the signature page already open, even when she closed a deal, there was no one to chatter excitedly in her ear, no one pulling her aside to demand a celebration that night. Everything became tasteless. She suddenly started to miss Henry. When Arthur placed the shredded pieces of their marriage certificate, which he'd found in the trash, in front of her, a strange panic seized her. It felt like she was about to lose something she couldn't get back. She called Henry, only to find she'd been blocked. He knew the certificate was fake, so he was giving her the silent treatment. If she went to find him now, she'd just be walking into a fight. He would definitely not let it go. It was better to let him cool off for a while. She hired several more assistants, but she found fault with every single one. A rumor even started at the company. Ever since Henry left, the position of CEO's assistant seemed to be cursed, becoming the job with the shortest tenure. It was true what they said. Only someone you trained yourself would work out. She started having people look for Henry. When she heard he had come to Boston, she, on a whim, chose to take a business trip there herself. Lauren took a sip of her wine. Her attention was caught by a figure that flashed past in the distance. When she pushed through the crowd to follow, the person was already gone. She shook her head, frustrated. When had she started missing Henry so much that she was hallucinating? Ms Vance, what are you doing drinking here all alone? Lauren turned to see Vivian Lynn of Zenith Corp., the person she was hoping to partner with. She shook her head, trying to focus. It's nothing. I just saw someone who looked a lot like my former assistant. Vivian raised her glass and smiled. I've heard that Ms Vance's assistant is exceptionally talented. Many companies tried to poach him without success. He's landed quite a few projects for your company. Lauren felt a surge of pride. You flatter me, Ms. Lynn. I trained him myself. Naturally, he has a sense of loyalty to my company. Vivian took a sip of her wine. She murmured softly, Is that so? Lauren wanted to discuss the current project with Vivian, but she saw Vivian put down her glass and walk outside. Thinking she couldn't miss such a good opportunity, Lauren followed her. Vivian walked through the garden on the terrace and found me sitting in a secluded corner, watching the city lights. I had just looked up when Vivian's lips were on mine. She seemed particularly fierce today, not letting me go until I was breathless. I shot her a glare. Should we head back? Yes. Let's go home. I turned my head and heard a noise nearby. I looked over and saw Lauren, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. She was shrouded in shadows, her expression a mixture of surprise and shock. Took her a moment to find her voice. She asked in disbelief, Henry, is that you? I looked at her mockingly. It's only been a few months, and Ms. Vance doesn't even recognize me anymore. Lauren opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Vivian's hand on my shoulder tightened. I decided to walk around Lauren and leave. There was no need to waste words on someone who shouldn't be in my life anymore. I had taken a few steps when Lauren seemed to snap out of her stupor. She came after, but Vivian blocked her way with an outstretched arm. Ms. Lynn, I just want to have a few words with Henry. Could you give us a moment? Vivian lowered her hand. Just as a smile appeared on Lauren's face, Vivian added slowly, I'm afraid not. Professionally, I can't let you harass my employee. And personally, I get jealous when you try to talk to my husband. Lauren stumbled back a few steps, looking at us in disbelief. She muttered, husband. How could he be your husband? Vivian actually pulled a marriage certificate out of her pocket. The real deal. If you don't believe me, Ms. Vance, you're welcome to stay a few more days. You can even attend our wedding. I looked at the certificate in Vivian's hand. Why would she carry that around with her? Lauren stood there, stunned, as if her soul had been ripped out. Vivian wrapped her arm around me. Honey, let's go. I have a surprise for you tonight. As it turned out, Vivian didn't let me go all night. When I was completely exhausted, she was still whispering persistently in my ear. Honey, do you still have any feelings for your old company? My limbs were aching. All I could do was shake my head frantically. No, none at all.